Dwayne stepped out from the washroom, wiping his hands on his trousers. The sanitizer was supposed to dry them completely, but either he was doing something wrong, or maybe the stupid thing just... His musing was abruptly halted when he spotted the Banu standing in the middle of the hallway. What the hell is a Banu doing here? He reached a hand slowly to the stun baton on his belt and firmly asked, "Can I help you?" A wide smile broke across the Banu's elongated face, deepening the network of crags there. "Hello." Dwayne quickly checked to see if the Banu's chest had a visitor tag. Sometimes one of the techs would bring in a guest if they had to work on the weekend, and it wouldn't be too surprising if Eco had forgotten to comm him from the security desk. No tag, and the Banu was carrying a data pod. Dwayne felt his pulse quicken. After working as a security guard for 8 years at the Bearing Applied Technology Labs, he might actually be in the middle of his first real break-in. Don't screw this up, Dwayne. Calmly, Dwayne informed the Banu, "If you don't have a security tag, I have to ask you to accompany me to the lobby." "Your tag," said the Banu, nodding to the small purple badge on Dwayne's chest. "Does it open the doors for all the laboratories?" Dwayne slipped the baton from its loop and pressed the primer. "Last warning, this area is for authorized personnel only, and I will remove you by force if necessary." The Banu simply tilted his head to the side and smiled wider. "Please look at me for the next 5 seconds. Thank you." Dwayne realized too late that he had forgotten to see if the Banu was alone. "Damn it, Mass, I told you to wait," Alex said as she peeled the still smouldering stun glove off her hand and tucked it into her belt. She had to admit, Clanger had done a hell of a job designing the thing. Too bad the glove was destroyed after one use. Worth the money, though, to be able to drop someone near instantly. Next time she was on Spider, she'd definitely need to see if there were any more for sale. "You said wait till you found the key." "We found the key," Mass replied, setting the data pod gently on the ground. What if this idiot had commed for backup or triggered an alarm? The Banu shrugged. Alex knew it was useless arguing with Mass about things like this. He was one of the best hackers she had ever known, but trying to get him to stick to a plan was about as useless as trying to get a Van Dool to talk about an issue. Anyway, improvisation was the key to being a good data runner. Knowing that Mass was going to do whatever the hell he wanted had just become a standard part of all her plans. "I believe he has done both," Mass said as he rolled the guard onto his back. It was then that Alex noticed the faint light blinking under the skin of the guard's neck. Crap, she thought, a dead switch. Bearing must have wired up their security personnel with them. Something happened to one, the rest would soon be on their way. Time for more improvising. "Can you hack it?" "I can try," replied Mass. Reaching down, he turned the guard's head to better expose the neck. Drawing a curved spoon-like blade from the small sheath hidden under his arm, Mass carved the dead switch out. Alex barely avoided being sprayed by a pulse of blood. As Mass connected a small silver connector cable from his pad to the flashing dead switch beacon that now lay in a puddle on the floor, Alex used her pyro to cauterize the wound closed. She had never been one to leave a body count behind. Not only was it sloppy and unnecessary, it tended to make the advos try that much harder to track you down. "Mass, instead of deactivating it, can you make it broadcast like the guard is still okay?" The Banu nodded and continued to manipulate his pad with his long, dexterous fingers. Leaving him to work, Alex yanked the tag off the guard's uniform and used it to access a janitor's closet she had passed a few paces back. Sure enough, inside was a scrubber. She carried it back just as Mass was finishing. "There," said Mass, retracting the connector. "Healthier than ever. Then let's put him back on patrol." She opened up the scrubber's rear hatch and Mass dropped the bloodied beacon inside the refuse storage bin. A few presses later and the scrubber was happily cleaning its way down the hall. There was still a good chance that the few seconds the dead switch had been active would have been enough to send a security squad to investigate, but if they were lucky, the scrubber's movements would have been enough to convince anyone monitoring that it had been some kind of glitch. Either way, they needed to hurry. The research lab gleamed with an immaculate shine that screamed money and danger. In Alex's experience, the only reason that anyone ever kept a room this spotless was when a little bit of dirt would be enough to lose a fortune in research or get someone killed by accident. Of course, with the amount she had been promised for pulling this job, she expected nothing less. Mass set the datapod down next to a bank of sleek white processors on the far end of the room. If their imposing size wasn't enough to tell that they were important, the thick coil of cables running into the data hub would have been a dead giveaway. Just about every piece of tech in the place was wired to the computers. He lifted up an access junction and plugged in his silver cable. "Any issues?" Alex asked. The Banu swiped at his pad. "Only minimal protection. I believe they are counting on the building's security to prevent access." Never underestimate the overconfidence that comes with owning a big fortress-like building. After bypassing the preliminary security, Mass opened up a port and hooked the data pod into place. He settled in to extract the data and began humming "Could Have Been You," a sure sign that he was lost in the code. Alex strolled around the room, rummaging through the work tables that were home to what she guessed were next-generation bearing weapons. For the millionth time, she wished she knew exactly what was in the data they were accessing. The name alone wasn't much to go by. Project Stargazer. But the guy who hired them refused to tell them anything more. Alex still had doubts about whether it had been smart to accept his offer, though her suspicion was that the job had been less of an offer and more of an order. The man, Mr. Grouse, contacted them through the usual channels on the amateur ornithologist boards. After all his bona fides checked out, they met at a small cafe on the outskirts of Prime. He'd been easy to pick out thanks to the yellow hat he had promised to wear. Alex had done her normal procedure of arriving early and placing a small pinhole camera on the wall. It was a great way to scout a potential client before meeting and make sure they weren't sweating too much or hiding an abnormal amount of guns. Neither applied to Grouse, though. He had been as calm as could be. Even more so, his skin had that artificially smooth look, a common side effect from some of the new facial reconfiguration surgical units. Which was surprising, because who would choose to make their face that uninteresting? He was like the human equivalent of elevator music. Even standing across the table from him, Alex had felt her eyes wander away from lack of interest. On second thought, she could see why being aggressively boring might be a good choice considering the work she assumed he did. After a few minutes of observing him to make sure everything seemed on the up and up, she noticed him reach into his briefcase and pull out a small hand scanner. With a quick sweep of the cafe, he smiled when he spotted the mounted camera. "Alexandria Dugan," he had said in a calm, even voice. "I am ready to meet whenever you are." "Well, that's a first. And if I am not mistaken, that Banu over there wearing the sun hat is your partner, Mass Hoolan. Why don't you have him join us so we can discuss our business together?" A few moments later, her and Mass were listening patiently to Grouse explain that he wanted all the records of a research project completely deleted from the Bearing Applied Technologies lab. Before she could even begin to protest, he had told them the payment. It was significantly higher than she would have even dared asked for, even on her most brazen of days. It was enough to put her and Mass on easy street and settle a lot of old debts. It had made her really nervous. That's why she had decided that they would make copies of the project files before they erased all trace of them from the lab's record. As the old saying goes, never trust a criminal. About halfway through Mass humming The Day Ahead, the alarm went off. That was disconcerting, but not nearly half as much as the giant turrets that lowered from the ceiling. Alex held her breath, but rather than turn and fire on them, the two turrets took aim at the lab's door. It quickly dawned on her why they were still breathing. It wasn't worth it to risk shooting up all the valuable equipment. The turrets were designed to stop anyone entering or exiting the lab, and stop with extreme prejudice if the large bearing logos on the ballistic guns were anything to go by. "How much longer, Mass?" she shouted over the blaring alarm. "The files have copied, but I will need some time to finish expunging the records." "Okay," thought Alex. "Let's see how much ammo these things have." Reaching into her satchel, Alex brought out her Insta-Friends decoy. She primed it and slid the puck out into the kill box and covered her ears expectantly. A moment later, the decoy went off and the turrets sprang to life, raining bullets at the artificial targets. Got to love Joker engineering. Half the time the stupid things didn't work, but when they did, boy did they work. Eventually, the decoy died and the turrets spun down. The floor was completely chewed through. It looked like they had been designed to allow the round to penetrate rather than ricochet into the expensive tech. Right, ricochets. I probably should have thought of that first. Alex would have to remind Mass to make an extra offering to the god of luck for her. She had only brought one additional decoy, and she had a feeling the turrets had more than enough ammo to outlast it. What she needed was a way to force the Insta-Friends to last longer. Scanning the lab, she quickly found what she was looking for. A large, half-built laser sat on one of the workbenches connected to an array of batteries. She momentarily considered using one of the lab's experimental weapons to destroy the turrets, but decided that she liked having all her limbs attached too much to mess with an unfinished laser. Instead, she used her pyro to solder one of the batteries to the decoy and slid the heavy makeshift device into range of the turrets. Once again, the gun sprang to life. It wasn't until the decoys had begun flickering away, the larger battery finally drained, that she heard the happy clicking whir of empty chambers attempting to fire. "I am ready to go," said Mass, strolling confidently through the still smouldering killbox with the datapod. Alex hurried to catch up. They left the lab not a moment too soon. Drawn by the gunfire, a full squad of guards descended upon it just as Mass and Alex managed to round the corner out of view. One of the benefits of robbing a campus as big as Bearings is that it took a while to move security into position. If she ever went straight, maybe she would get a job as a consultant and earn big credits pointing out all the dumb things companies did with their security systems. Leaving the main research wing, the pair weaved their way back through the labyrinthine building to the executive's office that they had entered through. Alex stopped them at every intersection to ping the path ahead. It would make them stand out on scanners, but it was safer than blindly stumbling into the roaming groups of armed guards. Thankfully, when they arrived at the executive's private hangar, it was unguarded and the belligerent duck remained just as they had left it. It was one of those interesting facts of life that powerful people's private hangars are considered so off-limits. Security guards assume criminals know not to land there too. That was why private hangars were usually one of the first things Alex looked for when she was casing a building. Plus, they usually had little free water bottles you could stock up with in case you got thirsty during a heist. Alex brought up her Moby and unlocked the Mercury. Mass headed up the ramp straight for data storage to make sure the pod was safely secured, while she made her way to the Star Runner's cockpit. The hangar doors opened above them and the duck lifted into the air. The name still made her smile. She had chosen it to infuriate the cocky info agent she had won the ship from. The pompous prick had the gall to name the ship Razor's Edge. Now whenever he wanted to buy data off her, he had to calm the belligerent duck as a reminder that it didn't pay to bet against Alex Dugan. She eased the throttle forward and the ship's wide swept-back wings cut easily through Terra's calm atmosphere. A moment after leaving the hangar, the pleasant Crusader computer voice alerted her that they were being targeted. Sure enough, a saber with Bearing livery was closing on her tail. It must have launched when the alarm went off. The comms chirped to life as they were hailed. "This is Bearing Security. Land immediately, or you will be shot down." Great, and it wouldn't be long before the Terra police joined in. They needed a fast getaway. "Mass, weapons, now!" When they had first met, Mass had refused to do anything on the ship that didn't involve hacking in computers, claiming that it was not his purpose. It had been close to 6 months before Alex had stumbled upon a solution that had worked. She had hooked up a terminal from a busted SIM-pod into the manned turret seat so that Mass could stare at a screen instead of out the window. That was all it took. Now he was a crack shot. Mass slid into the weapons terminal, his long legs at the awkward angle all Banu were forced to adopt using human seats. "How much should I explode them?" "None. Knock out their radars and I'll take care of the rest." Alex pulled hard and swung the Mercury wide, giving Mass time to line up the distortion cannons. The Sabre reacted quickly enough to avoid the first and second salvos. Alex rolled at the last second to avoid their return fire. They were running out of time. "Get missile lock," said Mass. "Mass, we're not killing them." "No killing," the Banu agreed. "Just a distraction." Decelerating till she saw red, Alex brought the ship to bear. After a heartbeat or two had thudded in her chest, she achieved lock and fired 2 missiles. The Sabre pilot, acting as expected, lit the sky with flares, pulling the missiles off course. Anticipating the brief distraction, Mass fired the turret again. The distortion cannons bit into the Sabre, disrupting its power. There was no way for it to maintain radar and stay flying after a hit like that. Maxing out the thrusters for all they were worth, Alex sped the duck away from Bearing's headquarters. However, rather than angling up to leave the planet, she angled the ship towards the nearby mountainous island range. There, she lowered the ship down into a small alcove cut into the beach beneath a rocky outcropping. Diverting power from the Mercury's shields and thrusters, Mass booted up their reg spoof. Now they would be able to fly around incognito for a little while. Should be fine as long as no one looked too hard or took a shot at them. She hoped they weren't the only ones in the area flying a Mercury today. It was definitely not their cleanest escape. No way they were going to make the rendezvous now, but Grouse was just going to have to deal with the change in plans. Bringing up her Moby, Alex began a message to their network of contacts. Bering had a lot of credits to toss around. You rob someone like that and they usually made it worthwhile to hunt you down. Leaving the system wasn't going to be enough. It wouldn't be long before the advocacy and a whole fleet of bounty hunters were breathing down their neck. If they wanted to get out of this in one piece, they were going to need some extra help keeping an eye out. Hopefully, a few of the friends she and Mass made over the years would be willing to lend a hand and alert them if they caught wind of the authorities closing in on the duck. Message sent. Now all they needed was somewhere they could hide out till things cooled off. Hey Mass, how would you feel about visiting your old Suli?
What's in the box? That is what Pandora asked. She was told not to open that box, but she did. The internet is like Pandora's box, full of the chaos of the world. And Pandora basically opened an email attachment asking to help a millionaire prince move money around. Bam! It was Medusa all along. You've turned to stone. Foolish! You should know your Greek mythology. What's not foolish is nordvpn.com/BoredGamer. NordVPN is potentially one of the greatest Greek mythological heroes. It helps protect you from the terrors of the internet, helping you be more secure and private, while also giving you great accessibility. You can use my links down below to get NordVPN cheap. September, we've got a giveaway. Every month we have a ship giveaway, and this month is no different. We're giving away 5 ships this month. Actually, that is a bit different. That's 4 more than normal. We're going to give each of them to a different winner. We've got a Nomad, an X1, a Sulen, a Mustang Alpha, and a 100i. They all come with access to the game and lifetime insurance. All you need to do to be in for a chance of winning any of those is comment on any of my videos made during the month on YouTube. I want to say a massive thank you to all our patrons and channel members. Your support allows us to make daily content. You are the best. And you should consider joining them by clicking the join button under my videos. It goes a long way in helping us, as does commenting, sharing videos, liking, all of that jazz. You do not have to chuck money at us. But if you want to, I'm not going to stop you. Thanks for watching and have a great September.